Hello and welcome to Metro AVTechTips. I'm Brent in a basement.
I'm Adam. I'm Adam in the lab. We'll call it that, right?
So, okay, just right up front so everybody knows, I am squatting on a step stool because the roof is just a little too low for me to stand in the basement and not be whacking my head.
Right.
But thank God for modern technology. Here we are.
We're how many thousands of miles apart, and we're able to do broadcasting like this. It's fascinating stuff.
Literally the entire continent. So, Adam, what is today's episode? But first, go through your spiel.
Everybody, thank you for joining us today. On today's episode, as always, like, share, subscribe, hit that little bell to let you know whenever we do go live. Hi, Chris. Thank you for the comments. It's good to have people in the chat. If you have any questions about whatever it is that we are talking about, please leave it over in the chat section over on the side over there, I believe. And again, we're on 3 different platforms right now: Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Don't know where their chats are on any of those, but please feel free to leave a comment or a chat item in those areas. We do monitor those and keep track of them. If you have any questions, like I said, about what we're talking about, or even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, we still want to hear from you. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. So if you have a troubleshooting problem that you're going through right now, put it over in the chat, put it in the comments. If you have personal problems that you're going through right now, I don't know if we're the right people to help, but we'll talk about it anyways. But
if you just feel the need to scream after 32 years of marriage, and most of those with menopause, I can be screamed at well.
There you go. So, like I said, everybody, if you have any questions with what's going on, or if we've helped you out in some way to help you understand EDID better, because that's what today's episode is, please leave us a like, subscribe, share it out to as many people as you can share it out to. We would be incredibly thankful for that. In fact, Brent, I'm going to spring something on you real quick. Do you know what our current subscriber count is?
No, but actually, because of your speech, I was going to ask. So what is our current subscriber count, Adam?
Our current subscriber count?
Brent is stuck in a dungeon.
Brent is stuck in a dungeon. That is correct.
I have very little space above me. And, I'm in a basement in L.A., Michael.
2,296 subscribers. So...
Woo!
Everyone who subscribed, thank you so much. It really, I know all the other YouTube channels and everybody else that you subscribe to and watch say the same thing. It honestly does mean so much to us that you subscribe and watch our shows. And anybody who is actually coming into the chat on a regular basis, we thank you for doing that. It's incredibly helpful for us because it lets our bosses know that, hey, this is actually worth doing. And of course, we've got the shows that are coming up. We've got, of course, CEDIA coming up at the end of September. Let us know at the show that you watch our YouTube channel. We really appreciate that because usually we have either general manager standing there or someone else of importance standing nearby that likes to hear that. So it makes a big difference for us.
And don't forget, I will be at the King of TV Shootout at the end of July in New York, which I believe will also be broadcast on YouTube.
I'm really looking forward to that one myself. It's always a fun thing to see the quality of TVs and the features that these manufacturers are coming out with. I'm hoping that Samsung brings their QLED to the show. I wish I was going.
Now, here's the thing. None of the manufacturers bring anything. These are all TVs that they go out and purchase just for this comparison, so there's no bogeys.
So they're going to the store and purchasing it from the store.
They're going
directly
to the store and buying them. This way, nothing is specifically prepared ahead of time outside of production norms. Now,
wonderful.
Just for what it's worth, once all these TVs arrive, they do ISF them.
Yeah.
To get for video file applications, they do ISF all the sets to get the best possible picture out of each set. They're not out of the box comparisons.
Well, and that's, you want to have as much of a baseline as possible in those, instances. So it tests right. So, but without further ado, Brent, what are we talking about today?
Well, first off, it's true, Michael, this particular trip has been a very busy trip with the exception of the 4th. However, I will reach out to you after today's show's over. I don't go home till Friday night, so there's a little bit of open time here. Today's show is one of my favorite topics, which is EDID.
Yeah.
And this is something we've been focused on since the very beginning of HDMI, when we realized, wow, this really is the biggest problem.
Yeah, it really is. And so today's topic, we're talking specifically about what is EDID made of, and then we're going to go into really your favorite
it's certainly
topic.
Not sugar and spice and everything nice.
No, it's the opposite. What is it? Snails and puppy dog tails or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, but it's not very easy, and in many cases it makes huge problems for everybody else. In fact, Brent, no more than 20 minutes before today's episode, I got a phone call from one of our common people that we talk to. They have I believe it's a 30-foot. Yeah, it's a 30-foot Velox cable, and they're having a green overlay on
EDID issue,
one half of the screen. So yes, yeah, they're having an EDID problem. Now, unfortunately, they didn't have a junior with them, but they are picking one up and they're going to throw it in.
Okay, so today's show is going to be a little bit different. Adam's actually going to start with the technical definition of what EDID is, and then sadly, due to my remote location, I'm going to have Adam be my hands while we do some drawings. This will be intriguing because we really haven't prepared for this.
No, we haven't, and we've already we've tried all of like 30 seconds for you to explain what you're trying to make me draw, and already your frustration levels are increasing. So we're going to see how today goes, and we're going to have some fun with it.
So
okay,
Adam, what is EDID?
All right, so EDID, it stands for Extended Display Identification Data.
Tell me you did not read that.
No. I have it all memorized. I have DHCP memorized. I have EDID memorized. I have Team DS memorized. FRL is memorized. Let's see, what else do I have memorized in there? AAV is memorized. I have
BMOC, ASAP.
Lots of them. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually, because I don't have everything perfectly memorized, I am going to go in here and I am going to share my screen. And here's the thing. EDID information is readily available. Specifically how EDID works. Whoever came up with it originally, and don't quote me on that or anything. I don't know exactly who came up with it originally. I'm sure that we'll have somebody over in the chat tell us. But when they came up with it, they did. Thank you. There it is. They did a really good job of making it available, at least at this point in time. Maybe when it first happened, they didn't make it super available because it was proprietary or whatever else. But now it is readily available for at least the structure of it and how that part of it is working. So it's so readily available.
Is why EDID exist part of your presentation?
No. Do you want to go into that?
I'll make it quick. It was developed for the computer world to make sure that really monitors negotiated what they needed to be doing correctly with PCs or computers in general. That's why.
Yeah. And that's a good thing to understand because luckily because of that, it already had the basics of what we need for HDMI and for HDMI communication. So that part of it, we didn't have to go into super, reconstruction of the system in order to utilize it for what HDMI needs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to
read on.
Yeah. Hundreds of acronyms and abbreviations associated with our industry. So what you're saying, Michael, is that you're going to be at CEDIA for the entire week giving one training lesson because it's gonna last you the entire time that you're there to give one lesson. Yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, let me hit the right buttons here and make sure I'm sharing this correctly here. Got my Chrome tab. There we go. Hit that and. How's that look? Okay, wonderful. We're good. All right. So, EDID. The information for this is so readily available now. You can see it's on Wikipedia. I have it right there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here, and we're going to look at the structure. Now, you'll note that I'm looking at version 1.4. Brent, what version are we on currently? Do you know?
Well, now are we discussing HDMI versions or EDID versions?
EDID versions.
I legitimately do not know the answer to that one, Adam, because I look at EDID on how it's associated with not Pacific, but
Right.
specific HDMI versions.
I mean, Pacific, you can say that it's, you're on the Pacific right now, so there is that. Okay, so we're going to look at 1.4 as our starting point for this, mostly because it's so readily available for that. We are, as far as I understand, we are on version 3 as EDID stands on its own, not necessarily from the HDMI as a whole. If you scroll all the way down here, one of the last things in here says version 3. It was there. There it is, version 3. Now, so one of the things that we have with EDID is specifically how it's structured and how it communicates. Now, it uses a spaced communication. That's essentially what it's doing. The way that this works out is that it's basically serial, right? Like it's essentially just a serial communication from the display to the source, and also from the source to the display. There is bidirectional communication happening. Primarily, though, it's coming from the display. The display is saying, I am this, I'm capable of displaying this. And it's sending that information back to the source, and the source is then saying, okay, here's the information. It may send an acknowledgement back. It may send information about what it can do, and a little bit of negotiation, but primarily it comes from the display back to the source. So we have a couple different ways that this works, but it all starts out the same way, regardless of what version you're using. What you can see there, the fixed header pattern is that 00FFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffffff
feathers.
Yeah, fluffy feathers. There you go. But you say fluffy feathers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times fast. 6 times fast.
I'm old. It ain't happening.
Yeah. From there, what happens is that we go into the manufacturer's ID. Now, this is where, of course, the manufacturer will put in their identification code to say what they are. Sony, LG, Samsung, Vizio, whatever it is. Then from there, we get into the manufacturing product code. So this gets into like the model number of it. We get into the serial number. All of this information is in there for that specific device. Now, what's great about that is that allows HDCP to work also, because it's able to pull that information to create the key in order for everything to communicate. That's part of what happens there also. On top of that, we can also see when it was manufactured, when that device was actually made. That's when we get into the different parts of that. So then the EDID version, usually 1 for 1.3 and 1.4. And then the EDID revision is usually 3 for, of course, 1.3 or 4 for 1.4. Okay. Now we get into the actual meat and potatoes of what's happening. So the cool thing is that the first thing that comes in is the bit depth. That's the first piece of information aside from the manufacturing code, aside from the model number and the serial number and all that kind of stuff. The first piece of information that actually is saying what it's capable of doing is the bit depth. Now, I find that kind of interesting because it sets up the rest of the pixel information, the rest of the coding that's happening. So I find that kind of interesting. Then from there, we go into the video interface. Now, Brent, where is EDID used?
I'm not quite sure how you're asking that question or why.
So, well, the question is what devices use EDID? Are we talking HDMI? Well, it's probably what interconnect use EDID?
Okay. Well, see, that's not a fair question because any analog and/or digital interface, VGA used EDID, DVI used EDID, HDMI uses EDID. SDI, however, does not use EDID.
Correct.
It's typically fabricated at the front end at the transmit side.
Yeah.
And and there are advantages to that. So
you can see that bits 3 through 0 in this first 20-bit section is.
Oh, really? You're gonna make me blow the screen up and look at that?
Well, for your old eyes, you might need to, but that's where we're at. So the first part is telling us what type of device we're connected to. Is it HD? Is it undefined? And which that could be the case if it's undefined. I'm kind of curious to see a little bit. I'm doing research on my end to find out what shows up in those undefined areas, because in many cases it should say HDMI A or HDMI B in order to say we're using an HDMI device, because you also have display ports, right? You also have MDDI, which I'm not entirely sure what the MDDI display
My
is.
first thought was MIDI, but that's MIDI, so I don't know what MDDI is. So
mobile display digital interface. High-speed digital interface developed by Qualcomm to interconnect the upper and lower clamshell of a flip phone. That's actually really interesting. So the old flip phones, like the old Razor phones, they used EDID.
Well, they would have to. You still got to know the color depth, your resolution, all that information has to be shared to the processor.
Right. We also say for bit number 7, we can say, is it analog input or is it a digital input? And then it goes on from there. We talk about the video white and sync levels. These are, we get in really in deep with these. I'm not going to go into detail about that because that's something that I don't understand. Brent, do you understand that yet?
Now I got to blow it back up again. Yeah, those are going to be your voltage for setting the sync on the horizontal and the vertical, and basic white level. So everybody's starting at the same place. Is that black to black underneath that?
Yeah, it says blank to black setup. Okay. Pedestal, the expected. The separate sync supported, composite sync supported, sync on green supported.
Which is the standard sync. Okay. In the old days of analog video, you would have RGB, red, green, blue, for component video. The horizontal and the vertical sync was carried on the green feed. So, for example, as long as you had the green cable connected of your component, you had a picture.
You would get picture.
You may not have, it wouldn't be a full color picture, but you had picture. If you had red and blue connected but disconnected green, you had nothing because there was no sync to know where to start and finish.
Right.
Sync on green is the most common sync used.
Is it still used today? Pardon me, is it still used in HDMI 2.0?
Under 2.0, I believe, yes. 2.1 may be different. I legitimately have not researched that to have an answer.
Now we get into the screen size in centimeters. Oh, this is kind of interesting. This is how we get into, very, very interesting. So, Brent, this is, if you go onto google.com, there is at one point there was a website that knew the size of your screen and would give you an on-screen ruler that was to the correct size, that it was actually scaled correctly.
So you could adjust your overscan and...
Not really that well. I mean, maybe it was probably used for that on the actual video side of this, but the website, my assumption is that the website was looking to this information from the display, which would then give the website a known value of how large the screen is. And so then it could actually spit out an on-screen ruler, like an inch ruler, or however
for
large
measurements
on the screen. So for measurements. So if you needed to just really quickly measure, how big is this pen, you could go to that website. It would find out the size of your screen, and you could put your pen up against there and be like, oh, it's 4 inches or whatever it is, right? That's actually kind of cool. I was always curious how it did that, and this is probably how it did that. It was able to find the information through the EDID information of the display. From there, so we have horizontal screen size and vertical screen size in centimeters. From there, we go into the display camera and the factory default data value, which is actually kind of interesting that all of that's just set this early on in the actual display.
Well, now, when you say early on, how long does this take?
Well, we're only in the 20th bit. This is, yes. Sorry, the 20th byte. So we're in, 0 through 19. 20 through 24, so we're only in the first 24
and how far does this go?
It goes all the way down.
How many lines? How many lines?
100 lines, I don't know, but or bytes, so it would be 127 lines.
Okay, so every bit of this happens quickly. So let's step back a second.
Sure.
Adam, what's the first thing that happens in an HDMI chain when you plug a source and a display together?
5-volt trigger.
And what does that do at the right? And what does that do at the display?
It's like a knock at the door, right? It wakes up the input.
Okay. What happens next?
We have the hot plug return from the display back to the source device, which is essentially who's there. It's a recognition that yes, there's something connected, and let's go ahead and move on to the next step.
And what happens at that point is the display then starts querying the source. Who are you? What are you? What do you want to do?
EDID.
Now, one of the things we learned early on is that because of the variety of things that all these devices can do, much confusion can happen. Chaos ensues.
Right.
Hilarity. It's what I used to refer to as the what do you want for lunch syndrome. So if you have a display that can support 480i, 480p, 540p, 720p, 1080i, 1080p, and various 4K resolutions, and you have a source that can do all of those, what do? How do you know where to go?
Well, at that point, usually you would go to what the highest common denominator is between the two displays, or between the two devices.
In theory.
Okay.
Frequently, however, the more options you have, the more confusing it is, which is one of the reasons we teach. First thing you want to do is uncheck everything in the setup, resolution-wise, except what you want.
Yeah.
Whatever your default resolution is on the source. Not the display, typically, because in most cases, the display is higher than the source. In most cases. 4K TVs kind of changed that because they came out before a lot of the sources did. But as a rule, the source is the limiting factor, not the display.
Right.
So by unchecking everything on the source, 480i, 480p, 720, but the one resolution you want, you actually speed up this negotiation process.
Right. At that point, essentially, we're saying we don't really care what the display is capable of. This is what we're sending.
It's more a matter of, and this is certainly not uncommon in the office. 2 or 3 people get together. What do you want for lunch? I don't know. What do you want for lunch? And then nobody can decide. When the correct statement is, I'm going to Zaxby's. Would you like something?
Sure. You realize
that's
that
what you
just lost like half of our northern audience. They have no idea what Zaxby's is.
Fried chicken nuggets and a Catalina sauce. Or French dressing.
Pretty much.
With extra
fried
mayonnaise.
Chicken around. Best fast food fried chicken, except if you're from the Las Vegas area, it was compared to Cane's fried chicken.
It's basically Cane's, but I personally prefer Popeyes. But that's beside the point. Less is more when it comes to EDID. The fewer options you have, the better off you are, because the fewer discussions and decisions that have to be made. So keep going down your list.
Okay. So from there, we get into the supported features for the bitmap. So DPMS standby support, suspend support, active off support. I believe at this point, what we're getting into is, there you go, device power management signaling. So this would be like the early days of when to tell a computer would tell its monitor to go into standby. Then from there, we get into display types. So here we get into our subsampling, right? So you see that there, we've got our subsampling. So bits 4 and 3, 4 or 3 through 4, wait. Yeah, bits, there we go. So bit 5, bit 4, bit 4 and bit 3. You have 00 for RGB 444, 01 for RGB and YCRCB. Then we have 10 for 444 and YCRCB 422. And then, of course, 11, which then supports 444 RGB, CRCB, and 444 and YCRCB 422. What I don't see in here is 420.
You know what's killing me is the fact that I cannot scroll up this screen while I'm listening to you.
Where are you wanting to go?
I just down to look more while you're yakking, and I can't do that, and it's driving me crazy. I keep wanting to reach up and...
scroll on down. From there, we get into our display type. Is it monochrome or grayscale, RGB color, non-RGB color, undefined? That was a big thing for computer displays. You would have a lot of older CRTs. You would run into something that was not color, where you would maybe get a monochrome.
Well, now, okay, let's talk about undefined for a second.
Oh boy.
What happens when you have a surveillance DVR in VR, and you want to run it into a splitter and multiple displays?
Yep. So
now, what's the problem that you get with that?
Well, in a lot of cases, it just gets confused and doesn't output anything, and we get black screens. And the fix for that, in most cases, is to go ahead and put in an EDID blocker, which just completely severs the EDID connection.
But wait, when that happens, what happens on this bit rate for your displays?
We go into the undefined?
Exactly, because with undefined, it's entirely set by the source, not the display overriding.
Now, this isn't the display changing it, though. This is
nope.
this is a fixed value.
Okay, I understand. But when it's undefined, the source becomes the controlling device versus the display.
Oh, so you're saying that if you had a display that did not define what it was or capable of doing, then the source would step in and say, okay, that's fine, we're going to do this.
Right. At that point, the operator of that source, can determine what's going to happen.
Right.
That's why the EDID works. The blocker works on security only in VRs and DVRs. It does not work on any normal device that requires HDCP.
Right. Then, okay, so from there we get into chromaticity. Say that word, chromaticity coordinates. I'm not going to get into that myself unless you want to, Brent.
I'm going to say no to that because I can't read what you've got there, and I've got it blown up.
Gotcha. Then we get into the established timing bitmap, or the supported bitmap.
Yep.
And in here,
resolution and clock rate.
Right. So all of these in through here are whether or not they are supported resolutions. Now you can see at this point we only go from 720 by 400, or there's 640 by 480 is the lowest I see in here, up to 1150 or 1280 by 1024, which
1280 by 1024.
Sorry, yeah, 1280 by 1024 is the highest. But then you could also see there's a 37th one in there for Apple Macintosh 2 at 1152 by 870. Then of course, with the 75 refresh rate, which is nice. Yeah. Now, what I find interesting in here, now this of course is saying whether or not the display is capable of displaying all of these different resolutions and frame rates, right? So
no,
refresh.
These are options. It's simply saying when you pick one of those displays, when you pick one of those bit numbers assigned to that, you're saying this is what I want as a display. Now, when you look at HDMI 2.0 and 2.1, which has enhanced EDID on it, because now we're up to 50 resolution clock rate options now, I think.
Right.
So there's a whole lot more stuff going on there, which is what has made 2.1 a bit more challenging on the EDID side. And why it doesn't always work going backwards to non-2.1 devices.
What I want to call out here that's really kind of interesting to me is these other manufacturer-specific display modes. Right?
I like the reserved.
Right? And so the other manufacturer-specific display modes, we got bids 6 through 0. So that's 7 points of data in there. Now, Brent, what I'm deducing from this is basically if we say we have a source device that's the same manufacturer as the display device, which means that they can utilize that piece of that area there to say that they are proprietary, versions to sources. So, for instance, if you have one source device that we'll use a PC in this case that has a specific capabilities to work with a specific display from that same manufacturer, they can go in here and activate certain things in order for it to know that it's capable of doing that. Maybe something like a touchscreen or something like that.
Well, it's more for high definition CAD operators. when you get into some of the CAD programs that have much higher depth of resolution, you have special monitors and you have to give that information to the processor to output that. So you have somebody, and we used to have one of those, and I'm sure they still do in metro engineering, where the screens are very high resolutions. They're very specific to that programming machine. That is where this would fit in to say, okay, I am brand X, you are brand X. Here's what we do together.
Right. Which is kind of, I mean, to have them put that piece in there, which granted the Apple Macintosh 2 setting would normally have been in there, I feel like, but they must have opened it up to
no, because it was very old. It was old and early.
Okay.
It was old, early, and defined. My question is, what is a 5.4 display?
A 5.4 display? It's a tall display.
Okay.
You see those, you don't see them very often, but they are making a little bit of a comeback. They're used a lot in, I've seen them used in like office spaces where you need like large, spreadsheet views where you have more vertical room. They're also being used. I see a lot of guys using those in video editing, because in the video editing window, when you have more vertical space, you have more channels that you're able to see in one go. But that's kind of an interesting usage for it. So in here now we're at bytes 38 through 53. So we've got our X resolution, which is kind of an interesting thing in here. I'm kind of curious about that. So that's going to be our cross resolution, and then we have the aspect ratio, which then would do the math for the vertical one. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I was just shrunk my screen down to read what's going on over here on the side.
We have the chat going.
This is the first time I've been able to read these. This is awesome.
Yeah,
I like this. I'm gonna have to have my iPad set up at the show like this going forward.
Yeah. So so this is actually, let's pause for a second, because Chris has put a good question in here. Did you see that?
Yes.
So Chris is saying that when he specs a job, I feel like I always need to choose a product that will do 4K 60 444. Is it a mistake to do that, or am I overthinking it? No, it's not a mistake, but it's more about what the job requires.
Okay, well, let's back up. What version of HDMI is required to support 4K 60 444? Careful. No.
Technically, it's supported with 2.0.
How? Because the bandwidth requirements.
I know.
You would have to go down. You would have to go down to 8-bit color.
Right, 8-bit color and possibly 420. Maybe 422 would work.
No. What does it say right there?
Sorry, 444 is on there. Yes, you would have to go down to 8-bit color, but it is supported. Now, technically, you can do that.
How many people would rather have 8-bit color with 444 versus 10-bit color with 422 at 60? Right. And why would you
4K 30 with 444 10-bit? Which that does fall into it.
At that point,
the better answer for that one is what media are you watching that actually is 444? Because most media that you're watching now is mastered in a 420 or 422.
420 is the standard for disc media, yes.
Yeah. And actually, in fact, even like our video team here that does our video stuff, like they use the Black Magic. In a lot of cases, the Black Magics don't even record 444. Those are 422, even in their raw footage. So
simply put, Chris, the answer to that is, unless you're setting up an HDMI 2.1 system specifically to support that, you're not going to get 4K 60 444 operating properly at HDR with 10-bit color in an HDMI 2.0 4K system.
For HDR, I would agree with you if HDR is a requirement. Now, here's the thing. If it's in, I can't even say that anymore. I was going to say, so long as it's a 4K, or as long as it's HDMI 2.0, but 2.0 doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But yeah, if you look at the bandwidth, and even that is kind of hard to say on a source and a display, because in most cases that's not what's advertised. What's advertised is feature sets. So if you see something that's capable of 4K 60, 444, 12-bit, or even 10-bit for that matter. But it's capable of that. That's kind of where you're at. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw that.
So, one of the issues we used to run into in tech support was there were two sources that we used to get a fair amount of calls on: the Oppo HDR HD Blu-ray player,
yep,
and the Apple TV 4K when it first shipped. Well, I've set it at 4K 60, 444, and I'm having all kind of problems.
No picture.
Well,
I can't see anything.
Well, yes, you are, because that particular setting, 4K 60, 444, 10-bit, which the machines are capable of, or at least emulating, is outside of what HDMI 2.0 was intended to support. And a lot of displays would not even accept it. So the correct answer was, okay, step it back down to 422 because the content's actually 420 in most cases. So you're not losing anything. And if it's actually outputting 444, it's doing it with emulation, not with content native.
Right. So the main takeaway that I want you to see from that is that we just went into a lot of like ridiculous detail just reading through a Wikipedia article. The point that I want to make is that it's not as elusive as a lot of people make it out to be. This information is readily available. What it means, though, is it might take a little bit of research on your own to find out exactly what happens or how it works. And you could see that even into, like, so for instance, with that DDI, I didn't know what that was specifically, so I just did a quick little search, and it told me what it was exactly and what it was for. That literally just the flip phone is using EDID, which is kind of fascinating when you look at that, because in a lot of cases you would think that it would just be where you have it says it's just predefined that this is what it is, but it sounds like they were actually utilizing that to give you different sizes.
I love being able to read the comments.
The comments.
This is awesome. I miss every bit of this every time. You're over there chuckling, and I have no idea what you're laughing at.
Well, now you know why I'm laughing. We have some very funny commenters. I do really like it.
Okay, I think what we have learned thus far is we're going to have to continue this discussion next week when I'm there and have the whiteboard to myself.
Oh, you're going to take over the whiteboard? Is that
I'm going to take over the whiteboard?
I can't draw like you draw, huh?
Oh no, your drawing skills are superior to mine. There's no question about that. It's your ability to follow directions that I question.
Let's try, but let's see what happens. Now, here's what I want to say, because I've left this comment up on the screen for one very important reason. Why does it screw up so much? Because there is so much data that's being sent across, and it doesn't necessarily resend it even if it fails. Because when it sends that information across, you may have a problem in the transmission of that signal. Now, what you I don't know if you caught that at the very end of it, there is a checksum that happens at the end of the EDID, and it has to equal a certain amount. Here's the thing, though, is that if that checksum comes up wrong, it may not request that information again. So when that happens, or better yet, it doesn't actually request it again, or it doesn't give it enough time to request it again, because HDMI is all about, I need to get data there as quickly as possible, possibly in those cases. But the point is that it's I said, it's a juggling act, right? I was watching you flip around your pen and drop it. Well, I have fun with it. Okay, so let's stop talking about the structure of EDID, and let's talk about what happens when you can't get that structure from the point where it starts to the point where it ends. The structure is important, not just with what you showed. Typically when I do the presentation in front of a class or group of people, we talk about what EDID is. EDID simply is the communication that has to happen prior to the release of picture and sound. Now, this is who are you, what are you, resolution, color depth, HDR now, versions of audio. If so, do you want audio? If so, what kind?
There's a lot of things that have to happen, and there are certain areas of this that are considered higher priority than others on purpose. Now, when you're looking at EDID, the typical top priority with most devices is audio. If you drop audio, why did you drop audio? The audio dropout is legitimately the idiot light on the dashboard of your car. You don't exactly know what's wrong, but you do know something's wrong. And this is on purpose. The inside of EDID, inside of any digital signal, ones and zeros, it's just ones and zeros. It either works or it doesn't work. Well, no. So, Adam, give me an overhead shot.
Sure. Actually, real quick, Chris makes a good point. You're not wrong, because that was analog, right? I mean, that's essentially what it was. When you're looking at that, right? You get the time and everything for it, but it was very quick. Because it was immediate, because it was just broadcasting. It was just sending the information.
Right.
There wasn't
There's no discussions.
Right.
Now, and the big advantage of digital over analog is the ability to define a lot more of the background information, why we're doing this, how we're doing this, and what are the settings, where analog was just kind of, hey, here it is, have a nice day. Okay, so Adam, we're going to try this. Give me a 1 and a 0. Or a 0 and a 1.
All right, Chad. How much do you want me to screw with him? Because I really screw with him right now. I've already got him upset with me from earlier. There you go, Brent.
Give me a 0. Give me a 0. Give me a 0 line and a 1 line. Okay, those are short lines. Okay. Now, let's look at the 1. I want you to divide the 1 into 3 equal segments. Starting at the left, going to the right. So 3 equal segments.
So 3, okay. Let's see if I can do this right. I'm gonna change colors so that we've got a little bit of a difference happening here, okay? All right, so we got like that.
No, I just want little hash marks across the top, 3 equal segments on that line.
Like this?
No, inside of the 1. You're killing me here.
Inside down here.
Like this. Hold on.
I love this. Oh, I love this so much.
3 equal sections.
Okay, I see where you're at.
We're doing this the old-fashioned way.
Inside of the 1. See, with me, yes. Inside the 1 doesn't mean inside where this is a 1. It means inside of where we are when we're at 1.
I'm going to ignore that because that doesn't make a damn bit of sense about what we're doing. Okay, now between dot number 2 and dot number 3, draw me a horizontal line.
Just straight in between.
Just a straight line between them.
Okay.
Okay, for all practical purposes, that is actually the operational area of the 1. That is when the data is detected by the clock in the receiving device, whether it's the display or the source.
Okay.
So, at this point, the way data works, when we are just like for all you guys that are lighting programmers, it's a ramp time. How long do we take to go from all off to all on? That is referred to as the rise time.
I see where you're going with this, and I'm gonna update this a little bit.
Now, rise time in our world is critical, and the area that the clock will accept can be tighter in some devices than others. And audio has the tightest on purpose because if it deviates outside of a very narrowly defined area, audio goes off on purpose. This is to let you know that you have potential problems in your system, and it will get worse. As he catches up with me here. Now, go ahead and put me a clock spot in the middle. Now, I want you to draw me a good rise time in red.
A good rise time?
A good rise time in red.
Okay.
We're going to do something in the 300 to 400 nanosecond range.
Okay. So it's gonna show like this.
Actually, it'd be a little bit more to your left toward dot number 1, but that's pretty good.
It would be closer to here?
Yes, right. Now, it's impossible to be absolutely straight because that would require a black hole.
Right.
Because data still takes time. Now, I want you to draw me a bad rise time in another color.
We'll do this one.
Now, here's what's going on here, and this is what affects you in the real world. The bad rise time is not in a high position when the clock strikes. So consequently, it is not read. It's not recognized as a data. Thank you. Now, this is a lot like a sprocket on the chain on your bicycle or your motorcycle. If you have one sprocket that's oversized, it may skip. And you add another socket or another sprocket, another sprocket, another sprocket, you wind up completely out of sync, or link in the chain, you wind up completely out of sync. Wow, I like that. With the sprocket, and you wind up skipping, the chain jumps, life goes to hell. This is what the vast majority of your problems are in the actual real world. What causes bad rise time, Adam?
Well, it's capacitance buildup and or resistance on the line. Now,
no, not
real quick,
resistance.
I do
capacitance.
Okay, capacitance. Pardon me. What I do want to say is that one thing that to describe this with is that when the clock strikes, and for here, right? So it strikes and it says the information is here. If it's at a 1, then it's a 1. If it's at a 0, it's a 0. But this piece here is nothing. It's not a 1 or a 0. It doesn't go back and look at the previous clock strike and say, what was it before? Nope, it's a nothing. It's not even a 0. It's just nothing. So that's
right.
Just
it's a null.
Information.
Just null.
Right. It's a null.
Because if it was a 0, it's a 0. But no, this is a null. It's not read as high or low.
Right. So,
it's missed.
So to answer your question, yes, what creates this slowing down is capacitance.
Now, here's the thing about capacitance. Capacitance builds up over time. Now, it's not going to be just a single bit that's out like this. As it starts to get out of sync a little more and a little more and a little more and a little more, all of them get out of sync.
Right.
And because it's a cycle, unless the system is really bad, it's not going to start while you're there. You will get the classic call a month or two after you've done the job. Yeah, listen, I got a problem. My audio dropped out. So you send your technician out to the job site. I don't know. He unplugs the cable, plugs it back in, and it works. For another month or 2 or 3, and it fails again. So Adam, when he unplugged the cable and plugged it back in, why did it start working again?
Well, he's stripped the capacitance. He essentially just reset it.
Right. He reset the whole system, so we're back to the original rise time. Now, over approximately the same usage time, the data will once again get out of sync timing-wise. Now, there are ways to fix this, and our JR3, our AIO2, our GA1, GA2 all have that built into them, but we'll go into more of that.
And the head shell of our active VLOX cables.
All of those devices have data accelerators built into them. Now, this helps tremendously. This is probably the biggest chunk of EDID failures out there is rise time problems. Now, Adam, I want you to put me a dotted horizontal line at 4.7 volts. And what does that dotted horizontal line mean?
So a dotted horizontal line at 4.7 volts.
Right, because what is in theory the green line? What's the voltage? For the one.
Yeah. So 4.7 would look like this.
Okay. Now, that is the actual voltage required to be recognized as a 1. And
Right.
yes, poor cables can cause that, among with other things we'll get to in a second. Okay,
Yeah.
Adam, what is the voltage required by HDMI to be recognized as a 0?
Say that part
I'm
one. I'm
waiting.
sorry. I was reading the comments. Say that one more time.
What is the voltage required by HDMI to be recognized as a 0?
It's
Let me repeat. Let me
yeah. I know. No.
that
I
statement.
know.
What is the
Go ahead.
voltage required by HDMI to be recognized as a 0? I'm waiting.
Anything below 0.9 volts may be considered a 0.
So it's not actually a requirement. It's a suggestion.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that we fight. Now, I'm going to make a brand statement that is not a reflection on the quality of the product at all, because we all know it's an awesome product. Some brands actually require a specific voltage. Now, the 0.9 he's wrote there actually goes back to Philips. And Philips' statement was anything below 0.9 volts may, and that's a big statement, may be considered a 0, not must be. So a manufacturer can now set anything they want as that requirement. Some manufacturers require 0.6 volts. Now, this is still fully certified, fully authorized, because what is it below? 0.9 volts.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely legal. It's absolutely correct. However, not every device, not every active cable, not every splitter, not every matrix, not every display will give you 0.6 volts. So there can be some problematic connectivity issues.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and what happens you might get a 0.8, you might get a 0.7, you might get a 0.65, but because you're at that point above the 0.6 as to what they require as being below, you can run into problems where it says, well, you're at 0.65, you're not below 0.6, so technically that's a null. So really anything that's in between these here, but all is a null. If you wind up here, you can see that at this point here. So let's say, for instance, here's our 4.7 and here's our 0.9. So when that clock struck to say where are we at here at this intersection of that line, it may have been at, say, like a 3.9 volts. So because it struck at that point and it was in between those voltage values, it's a nothing, which means that what you're running into with the Kaleidoscape or other manufacturers that have those requirements,
same chips,
you run into that point where it's not anything. It's not a 0 or a 1. It's a nothing. It's a null.
Now, to answer the expert's question, absolutely cables can affect this, because if you lose voltage in the length of the cable because of wire gauge, because of wire windings, because of bad terminations, you won't hit that 4.7, and you may not get down to the 0.9 or 0.6, because it's all about transition time. So even if the clock is right, even if your data is where it's supposed to be in a timing position, it may not be where it's supposed to be in a voltage position. So it's not a single solution answer. For example, our JR3, the AIO2, and the Velox active cables all had a voltage comparator built into them to drop it down to 0.4 volts. This is to make sure that we're well below any of the devices currently on the market. So along with stripping the capacitive loading off of the data bus, so your rise time is correct, you also make sure that your zeros are correct. There's not a tremendous amount of problems at the 4.7 until you get into bad connectivity or bad cable design or bad solder joints. Most devices, most devices will support the correct voltage on the high side, but because there's not a mandatory statement on the low side, there can be some issues.
Real quick, Brent, I want to comment about Taylor. I'm pardon me, Taylor. I'm not gonna say your last name because I'm going to screw it up. But I think it's Michael John, Michael Young, maybe. Pardon me. So SDVOE, if I understand it correctly, and again, I'm going to need to go back and do research on it. The near instant switching isn't necessarily because of EDID. EDID is being managed by the receiver that's at the display. So the receiver at the display is saying, I'm a source, I'm outputting 4K 60, here's my EDID information, everything else. But because it's being transmitted over the network, it's able to convert it, or the type of compression that's used, and what's the word I'm looking for? Like MP4 or AVI or whatever that is. I forget the word I'm looking for. But essentially,
I don't know, but it's what it is storage of the EDID at the transmit side to negotiate there instead of through the display.
It's at the receiver. What's happening is the receiver is automatically converting the video that's actually coming to it and doing that. That's why it is near instant, because technically nothing's changing between the receiver and the display. The EDID communication between those two devices is not changing. Nothing's being changed there. I have to do research. I have to verify that. But as far as I understand, that's how that's working. Is that it's actually saying codec? That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not querying the display because it's already got the data. It's the query that takes the time. Early on in our world, one of the complaints was if you had a source, an AVR, and a display, particularly a projector, it could take 8 to 15 seconds to get a picture. And if you had a Sony projector, it could easily take 25 seconds. And this is simply a matter of the process and the double checking and the checksums in the EDID process. Now, most of the manufacturers have in fact shortened that by simplifying and not requiring as much redundancy. And in some cases, you can do it by also minimizing the options. Okay, I want this resolution, I want this bit rate, I want this, and this. So a lot of that negotiation goes away, so things happen faster. But I have seen it, particularly in the earlier Sony projectors, 25 seconds to lock a picture, changing sources.
Right.
And that's just the nature of their communication ports.
We are about a minute away from being at our 1 hour mark, so we do need to start wrapping up today. Everybody, thank you for watching today. I'm really excited about what we've talked about so far. I think there's a lot for us to continue to discuss. As far as let me hit the right button here to get everything back to where it should be. And there's so much more for us to talk about. I think we need to go back and do another series just on HDMI and the general communication of HDMI across an HDMI cable.
And 2.1 has added some wrinkles, so it'd be a good idea.
Well, and about a year and a half ago, I would say, early 2021, we did an entire series on HDMI, just the structure of HDMI. We actually took apart, I don't know if I still have it here or not. I have one thing that I'm working on. We actually took apart an HDMI cable and used it as a descriptor for us as we worked through the specific channels on it. And I think we need to go through and do that again with the new information that we have for HDMI 2.1. So if we think that's a good idea, let us know over in the comments section or give us a call and let us know about what you think about that. But with that, Brent, I think we do need to go ahead and wrap up today and lock it down.
Do me a favor, step to your left. Thank you. My phone number is 386-202-6137. Brent McCall at metroav.com. And good. He is Adam, step to your right. Adam Rogers at go
metroav.com. Adam.Rogers at metroav.com. You can, of course, call us as well, 386-202-6132 or 6137 is Brent's number. That is our direct lines that does go to us directly. So if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for us to talk about, look, you can see that we're recycling some of the topics and stuff because not necessarily that we're running out of things to talk about, but mostly because these are still things that we get calls on. And so it's something that if we're still getting phone calls about it, then we need to get that information out there again, and really start doing some more education on it. I'm kind of curious to do some more research on what Taylor is talking about with SDVOE as to how that works. I'm pretty sure that's how it's working. I have to double check myself on it. But I do think that we need to do another HDMI series.
Back in the days of SDI, I was a big fan of those for commercial applications because it did not negotiate past the transmit side of the SDI system. So if you were running into multiple displays in a bar or church and you wanted to switch quickly or support a whole lot of displays, putting an SDI send receive system between your source and your matrix or your splitter solved a whole lot of problems.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, Brent, let's go ahead and wrap it up today. I think that kind of does it for us. Let's go ahead and get things signed off. As always, everybody, thank you for joining us in the chat. We really appreciate that. Like I said at the top of the episode today, it means so much to us to hear from you, whether it be in the chat or whether it be in person at different shows and whatnot, or just giving us a call. We honestly do really appreciate that. We're here. We're passionate about this stuff. As you can tell, we get a little heated on these episodes every once in a while, but we are very passionate about it. We love the talk. So if you have questions about it, give us a call. It's if you just want to chat about how HDMI works or different theories about it, bring it on. We love to talk about it.
I would like to add for those up in the Northwest, in the San Francisco area, Patrick Pack passed away this past weekend. One of our distributors, which to me is very sad because he was one of the few guys I could have legitimate 2-channel discussions with. He was a serious stereophile. And we'll miss those discussions immensely. Again, I will be in New York at the end of the month for the 2022 CTA TV Shootout, King of TV Shootout. Check it online. Come by and visit. Say hello. CDA in Dallas. Hope to see you guys there. And
looking forward to it.
Anything else, Adam?
No, I think that's it. Brent, go ahead and sign us off.
Reboot early.
Reboot often.
Don't cut your wires too short.
Turn off CEC.
Call tech support.
Make sure your HD-based T is shorter than 20 meters or longer than 20 meters.
Longer than 20 meters.
And with
have a great week. Thank you.
We'll see y'all later.